Asalam. So here we are. It's Ramadan. I really did not want to deal with any of this right now, but I have no choice. I would like to play a video for you guys, so let's watch some YouTube together. I want to brief you up on a couple things before I talk about what I need to talk about.
These three lines, can you tell which of them matches that first line? And how sure are you? Hold that thought and listen to this story, because most people can get this wrong. Once upon a time, on the eve of a major religious holiday, a 7-year-old boy was observing his grandmother as she poured an extra glass of wine. When the boy asked who the glass was for, she said that it was for the Prophet. The boy didn't believe her, so his uncle told him to just observe the glass closely. Full of expectation, the boy watched the glass intently, and suddenly he thought he saw the level of wine drop just a bit. In 1951, decades after the incident, our boy became a pioneer in social psychology, determined to rationalize what actually happened that fateful night. Did some of the wine really disappear, or was he made to believe that? To find out the truth, he devised an experiment to investigate whether peer pressure can be strong enough to change our perception and make us believe in things that are not true. Solomon Asch's Conformity experiment was conducted with 123 white male college students who were told to be part of a study in visual judgment. Each student was introduced to a group of 6 to 8 other students who were, in fact, actors who already knew what the experiment was about. The group was then gathered in a classroom and shown 2 cards, the first with 1 line, the second with 3 lines on it. Each student was then asked to say aloud which line in the second card matched that first one. The group was seated in such a way that allowed the actors to respond first, leaving the real participant to respond last. For the first 2 rounds, the fake students, also known as Confederates, gave the correct answer, and the innocent student, known as the subject, said whatever he thought to be true. In the 3rd round, the actors began to respond with a clearly wrong answer. For the next 12 rounds, dubbed the critical trials, all the Confederates would give the obviously wrong answer. So the innocent student could either ignore the majority or ignore the truth. So what did the experiment tell the researchers? Upon completing 18 rounds with all 123 subjects, the experiment came to the following conclusion. 23% of the students always gave the right answer. 72% conformed to the majority at least once. And 5% completely succumbed to peer pressure and always gave the obviously wrong answer. Asch's work also showed that if just one other acting student responded correctly, the effect of peer pressure decreased substantially. The experiment also showed that the opinions of 3 peers are enough to influence a student to change his mind. Increasing the number beyond 3 Confederates did not increase the levels of conformity among others. Or put differently, if 3 people say something obviously wrong and there is no one to disagree with them, many of us agree with the wrong answer and start lying due to our deeply human desire to fit in. Since then, Asch's experiment has been successfully replicated many times, and the effect remains significant, especially among women and homogeneous peer groups. In 1955, Asch famously said, "The tendency to conformity in our society is so strong that reasonably intelligent and well-meaning young people are willing to call white black. This is a matter of concern. It raises questions about our ways of education and about the values that guide our conduct. What do you think? Would you have conformed or stuck to the truth? Do you see the Asch's effect in your daily life or in social media? And what can we as adults or educators do to give young people today the strength to stand up and speak the truth? Share your...
Okay, so, yep, I wanted to brief everyone up on that experiment there. There's a couple other ones, and I'm trying to be fast about this because I know nobody really likes long videos. One thing I want to tell you guys about today, there is a forum. It's called the World Economic Forum. I really wish that people would pay attention to that. Now, if you go to their site, it's an official site. If you go to their site, they word everything in sugarcoating because they want us to believe that everything is for our better good. It's really not for our better good. It's for their pockets, their own personal interests. And I hope that you all have eyes to see and ears to hear when it comes to, and just use discernment when you go through this. It's a legit site. None of these people are voted for. But it's a legit site, so don't take my word on it. Just look into it. The World Economic Forum. It's WEF. Now, one thing I want to bring everyone's attention to, because I don't think they pay attention to, or they know what is actually going on right now. I'm going to run a couple things by you, and I pray that you look into this further. I don't know who have heard of this, the Techhnate of America. It's technocracy. Okay, the Technocracy was founded by Howard Scott in 1933. Now, their main objectives are to, it's the energy theory of value. Goods and services were to be valued based not on money, but in terms of energy input required to produce them. Now, this would bring in the abandonment of democracy and embracing a technocracy government by unelected technology skilled in an empirical driven elite. I know I'm not saying that right, but that's what it is. These people are not going to be voted for. They are going to be technocrats. They are going to come in and they are going to take over. Now, what is happening right now with our neighbors, Mexico and Canada? You ever wonder why all of a sudden now we're at odds with them? We're kind of picking fights with them. It has to do with this right here. The land is needed. Why is the Gulf of Mexico being renamed the Gulf of America? It's not a patriotic thing. It all has to do with this right here. So please look into it. The Technocrats of America. Technocracy Incorporated. It was founded by a man named Howard Scott, founder in 1933. Now, I want to run a couple other quotes that I've heard over the years that I really stick by, especially as an American soldier. Those who would give up essential liberties to pursue a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. Benjamin Franklin. Now, as a soldier, I was always brought up, I was always told, I come from a military family too, freedom's not free. We all have to defend it. Freedom is not free. Here's another quote by our old president, our former president, Ronald Reagan. Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. I really hope these quotes hit you hard. So that being said, I'm going to play a couple more studies here with you. Please stick around. I'm trying to rush through this, so it's not going to take too long. But these I feel are important to educate people on. Why do good men do things like this? What made Nazi Germany, what made that average citizen turn on their neighbor, their friends, Let's play these out.
Are ordinary people able to do terrible things? And if so, how many would give a strong electric shock to an innocent other just because they are following an order? To answer these questions, we can look at the controversial work of a man who just wanted to find answers to his family's horrific past. In 1961, Stanley Milgram, a young psychologist, wanted to find out how ordinary citizens were able to commit acts of unspeakable evil in Nazi Germany. His theory: some people do horrific things because they obey even the most wicked leaders. To test his theory, Milgram designed a clever experiment that changed our understanding of human behavior forever. The Milgram experiment involved 3 people: an authority, called the experimenter, who was dressed in a lab coat to appear powerful, a volunteer, who was assigned to be the teacher, and a victim, the so-called student. The teacher was the test subject, whereas the experimenter and student were both actors. Following orders, the teacher would test a student who was sitting in another room by asking them questions. For every wrong answer, the experimenter would ask the teacher to inflict an electric shock, up to a life-threatening 450 volts. Before he began, Milgram asked his colleagues what they expected the outcome to be. Almost all of them agreed that only a few of the volunteers would obey and inflict electric shocks on innocent others. What do you think? Would anyone administer shocks higher than 300 volts? Milgram then advertised his experiment as a study on memory and learning at the campus of Yale University. People signed up without any idea of what they were really getting themselves into. The experiment began with the volunteers meeting the other participants. The volunteers then pulled a card to draw their role. Little did they know that they could only draw the teacher. Next, they would be given a sample of a light electric shock in order to experience firsthand what the others would have to go through. To start, the experimenter and the teacher were seated in one room, and the student was strapped to a chair in an adjacent room. The teacher and student were able to communicate, but not see each other. The experimenter then gave the teacher a list of questions. The teacher would then read out the questions, and the student would press a button to indicate a response. For every false answer, the teacher would administer a shock, starting at 15 volts and increasing in 15-volt increments up to 450. What the teacher didn't know was that the student didn't actually receive any shocks. Instead, a tape recorder was used to play various responses. In the beginning, the teacher would hear a protest or bangs against the wall. If shocks would increase, the reactions would become louder, and in case someone would go all the way, the learner would fall silent. In case the teacher became hesitant and asked to stop, the experimenter would resort to the following 4 prompts. First, he would say, "Please continue." If that was unsuccessful, he would go on with, "The experiment requires that you continue." Then, "It is absolutely essential that you continue." And lastly, "You have no other choice. You must go on." Along the way, the volunteers displayed signs of extreme tension, such as sweating, trembling, and even uncontrollable laughing fits. The experiment would be stopped only after all 4 prompts had been used, or the maximum voltage of 450 volts had been given 3 times. Milgram found that, of all participants, 100% gave at least 300 volts, and 65% went all the way to 450 volts. The experiment was later criticized for being unethical because it deceived innocent people into performing what seemed to be terrible acts of violence. However, his experiment was successfully replicated many times, involving different populations and leading to similar findings. Milgram himself left us with this to think about. It may be that we are puppets controlled by the strings of society, but at least we are puppets with perception, with awareness, and perhaps our awareness is the first step to our liberation. What do you think? Would you follow or question the orders if you were one of Milgram's participants? And what can we as a society teach future generations to help prevent horrific acts that can happen when ordinary people blindly follow an authority? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.
Now, the reason why I was hoping that you would stick around long enough to watch that study is because we have a lot of things going on with our law enforcement today, our military. It seems like once you get that sense of authority, you start to act in ways you wouldn't before. Morals get watered down, and I know with soldiers we're just told to follow orders, and it's like we're supposed to be expected to turn into a robot and not think. With police, I've had encounters myself. I have no record. I don't do anything illegal, but somehow it's like even if you get pulled over for a traffic ticket in my area, it's just taken to an extreme level. If you don't know your rights, they do try to walk all over them. Now, I have to talk about some serious things here because this has been in motion for a while. Again, I will go back to the World Economic Forum. This is written in their playbook. I know there's an Agenda 21 that was switched to Agenda 31. Now it has been changed to Agenda 25. I'm not quite sure of the year because it is getting moved around a bit, but if you pay attention to this agenda, things are playing out. We have in our military, we have active duty. We have the reserves, which are only for, they get 2 weeks out of the year, and I don't know exactly reserves, but I know that they're called in. They're made to be able to call in if there's not enough service, enough troops. And then we have the National Guard. And the National Guard is supposed to be the only troops that are allowed to have boots on ground here in our country. When you are sold into the idea of joining for the National Guard, good people join because they want to help out in national disasters, things like that. But there always is, I don't think it's told enough to the soldier who actually signs up for this service, but it's to be used against the American people. Now I want to bring you guys to the Insurrection Act of 1807. The Insurrection Act of 1807 is a federal law that empowers the President of the United States to deploy U.S. military and federalized National Reserve troops, National Guard troops, within the United States in particular circumstances, such as suppressed civil disorder, insurrections, or rebellions. Now, I know that just a few months ago, we had the George Floyd, case getting dragged back out again, and Trump was trying to pardon the officer that was guilty of his murder. I know there was an uproar in the streets, and I was praying so much that my fellow Americans, they weren't going to protest in the streets, because I knew that what he was trying to do is get people to act in a state of emotion. I think a lot of these protests that were handled with Black Lives Matter and over, horrible things such as the George Floyd case, I think it was handled untastefully, and it was deliberately done so. I know that certain government groups infiltrate into these organizations and these protests, and they try to get people riled up. Then they start acting in aggressive ways. I do believe that aggression is our last resort. And what I saw was attacks on everyday Americans. Small business owners were getting their shops vandalized and looted, and it wasn't right. We need to stand together against our real suppressors, not attack each other. I believe that group started out with good intentions. However, it was hijacked and it turned more into a black nationalist, which makes you no better than the KKK, the white supremacists. I know that a lot of the funding, they've been audited. It hasn't gone to the true victims of these families who they were parading their stories out in the medias and stuff like that. The true victims never saw any money from that, but there was a lot of money collected in empathy for the events that has been happening. Like I said, we need to go after our real enemy and not attack each other. I am hoping that through all this, we can come together and see who our common enemy is. I'm hoping that we can stop being puppets to this whole charade. Divide and conquer, that is the oldest trick in the book. If you can't see what is going on right now, I don't know if you ever will. We have, for years now, we've been fighting over LGBT, with, like I said, I'll say it again, I grew up around gay people my whole life and there was never an issue. But today it seems like an issue is made in every, little thing. I don't believe everything I see because it's just, that's not the experience that I've had. And I know good people who are LGBT who have not suffered in the ways that is being told to me. And Black Lives Matter, I was unaware of so much that was suppressing my fellow African American brothers and sisters. But when I looked into it, first of all, I haven't always worn a hijab and I've been accused of all sorts of things. It's like white people were forced to believe that there's something internally wrong with us, when never a day in my life have I ever looked at a man for the color of his skin or the nation he was born in and judged him based on that. It seemed like a collective attack. And when I looked into things, a lot of things was brought to my attention I wasn't aware of. It was a lot of systemic racism that was playing out, and it's like instead of attacking the people who were really doing the suppression, we're attacking each other. I don't even want to get into the KKK because that whole thing was just, I don't know any good in that movement. What was another movement here? Now, I want to also bring to your attention that there was just a school. It was a high school, and Leave It to Our Youth. And I could cry thinking about it. What beautiful people. But I don't know the whole story, but there was something about a student that was caught up in this ICE thing going on. And the students, they all got together. The teacher got reprehended for standing up for the students. And the rest of the students all came together and they started to protest. And their protest was, everyone is welcome. Everyone is welcome. And I felt that was a very powerful, statement these children were making. Let that be our movement. Everybody is welcome. Everybody come together because it's really important right now. So going back to, I'll just repeat a couple more things. The Insurrection Act of 1807. This is why there's a lot going on at the border of Mexico right now. We are running with the whole idea that we're there trying to run out these drug cartels, when truthfully it was our government and stuff who have been supplying them, leading the way for them, opening the door for them. They make profit off of all of this. I know most of our illegal arms trade has to do with the government supplying these cartels. So it's not for our better good. Nothing is for our better good. And I will leave with a couple more of these comments, or quotes, I'm sorry. Those who would give up essential liberty to pursue a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. Now, I remember when 9/11 happened, And I was one saying, oh yeah, we need to, make it harder at the airports, like not harder, but, put more safety measures at the airports and things like that. Then I realized how much of our freedoms we were giving up. That's what's about to happen over these drug cartels. We are essentially, being made to be afraid of all this. This is the merchants of chaos. They run, in the mainstream media, they run with all the scariness, the scary stories, and, and their only solution is their solution. The only solution we are offered is their solution, which is giving up all of our freedom. I know I'm censored all the time. I'm censored all the time. I'm an American soldier and I can't speak truth. Freedom is just an illusion. It really is. But I also want to leave with one more quote. And this is why I do what I do. I'm not afraid of nothing but Allah, but His judgment. I sit here alone, and I continue to try and push truth, even though nobody really wants to hear it. But I do it for my children. I don't know their future. I remember when we could sit and dream about things, and it's like, what do we tell our kids to put hope in anymore? What career do we tell them to venture off into? What does their future look like? I can't be the only one in concern about all this. I don't know what to tell my children. I don't know what do I send them off to college? Is there even going to be an education system? And what job do I give them security in? The American dream is over, if it even existed at all. But Ronald Reagan, he made these comments, he said these words: freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. I'm begging you all now to throw away this, like, vets protesting for their, health care and all this other stuff. Black Lives Matter, running with this, I do agree that everyone should be free and no one should be suppressed, but stop the divide. LGBT, all of us, we just need to come together. Realize who your enemy is. And I know myself, I'm an American soldier. I took an oath over 20 years ago. I'm not active duty. I've been out for a good while now. But I never forgot my oath. Do you remember yours? Defend this country from both foreign and domestic. I'll repeat it again. Defend this country from both foreign and domestic. Look around you. Who is your enemy? Who is taking all your rights? Who's stealing all your dreams? Who is making life so difficult for your children? Freedom isn't free. It's time we come together. Okay.
In 2015, the Stanford Prison Experiment was released in theaters. The movie detailed the infamous 1971 experiment in which 24 college students were put in prison. Now, while the experiment was supposed to last for 2 weeks, it was terminated after 6 days due to psychological effects that it was having on both the guards and the prisoners. So what actually happened during the Stanford Prison Experiment? Why is it so infamous? And does the movie get everything right, or is it just a dramatization? This video will briefly explain the experiment, its impact on the world of psychology, and the controversy that it's facing 45 years in the future. So, first off, what is the Stanford Prison Experiment? After Milgram's experiment rocked the world of psychology, many people were left with questions about obedience, power dynamics, and the abuse of power. Philip Zimbardo, a professor at Stanford, wanted to then explore these questions further. And with a grant from the Navy, Zimbardo set up something called the Stanford Prison Experiment. He wanted to see, could a person's role influence their behavior? Zimbardo and his team interviewed 70 applicants at Stanford who were willing to participate in the study for 14 days and receive $15 a day. They wanted to make sure that they chose the brightest and the most mentally sound participants. And after narrowing down their applicants to 24, the researchers flipped the coin and assigned the roles. Half of the participants would be prisoners, and the other half would be guards. Now, the researchers then set up a basement at Stanford to make it look like a real prison. They were very serious about treating the experiment like a simulation. Prisoners were actually arrested in public and taken into prison. They were even booked, fingerprinted, and strip searched. Now, Zimbardo's team also gave prisoners numbers that were meant to be used instead of their real name. They claimed that it would help give the prisoners a sense of anonymity and help the experiment. Guards had pretty much free reign over how they could treat the prisoners, while they had two main rules. They could not hit the prisoners, and they could not put prisoners in solitary confinement for more than an hour. Philip Zimbardo played the role of the prison superintendent. His graduate students and research partners also played roles as members of the parole board and the prison warden. Prisoners were tasked with certain activities like writing a letter home to their visitors and making a case to the parole board about why they should be let off. Guards also subjected the prisoners to counts, in which they forced the prisoners to do jumping jacks, push-ups, and other degrading tasks. Now, it did not take long for these guards to start to abuse their power. Within one day, a guard actually hit one of the prisoners with his nightstick. On the second day, the prisoners tried to rebel, and so their beds were taken away. To punish these prisoners, the guards shot a fire extinguisher into the cell. Guards used physical and psychological abuse, including things like sleep deprivation, to punish and intimidate the prisoners throughout the study. The prisoners were forced to wear dressings and stocking caps the whole time. And at some point, the guards would put bags over the prisoners' heads. And since the study has ended, it has since been compared to actions at the Abu Ghraib detention center. Zimbardo has written about the case and its parallels to the prison experiment since. So why did this experiment get shut down? Well, very quickly, the guards started to abuse their power. The prisoners started to spiral. On the third day, prisoner number 8612 started to cry and scream uncontrollably. He threatened to harm himself and call a lawyer. To avoid potential psychological damage or a lawsuit, he was let go. Two other prisoners were let go in the next 2 days. One actually refused to eat. And on the fifth day, Zimbardo's girlfriend, which was actually his former student, came to visit the experiment. Zimbardo and his team had been monitoring the experiment and playing their roles in it 24/7. And when she saw the horrors that was going on in the prison, she asked Zimbardo to end the experiment immediately. She even threatened to break up with him. Well, eventually on the sixth day, he ended the experiment. This experiment showed the world how quickly people can abuse power when it's given to them.
Asalam, I'm sorry. One more thing I forgot to add is the Insurrection Act of 1807. I tried to explain that to you. It's a federal law that empowers the President of the United States to deploy the U.S. military and federal National Guard troops within the United States in particular circumstances, such as to suppress civil disorder, insurrections, or rebellions. I'm bringing this up because of what's happening right now on the Mexican border with these drug cartels. They are going to call in this act right here, the Insurrection Act, and we have roughly a month. I'm just letting you know, roughly a month that this will be called into act. So be ready. Asalam Alaikum. Again, I'm going to say, let's join forces and do better.